Oh, there's Steve.
There's
Yeah,
Steve.
Dan hasn't shown. There's Dan. All right.
Okay, I don't have the agenda. Can someone go by the agenda during that time? Is that okay?
Yeah, you want me to go through it?
Yeah, because we're taking a 5 minutes, so
Okay,
we can,
yeah.
I mean, if you want to, I mean, it's up to you. I'm just suggesting that.
Would you want me to email to you or just just talk about it?
Whatever you want. I mean, it's up to you. I mean, are all the roles filled? Do you want asking people to fill roles? What?
We do need a general evaluator.
It is now 6:30. It is the official time for the start of our meeting. I'd like to welcome everyone to Sarasota Evening Toastmasters 6026. And in my own inimitable way, I have a few little choice things that you might like to hear, or else go get water now, take a nap, whatever you have to do. Well, we had a couple of birthdays this month. We got Jackie Chan in 1954, Billie Holiday in 1915, James Gardner in 28, and William Kellogg in 1860, the cereal giant. And in 1897 was Walter Winchell. Let's see, today is National Beer Day, recognizes the world's most widely consumed alcoholic beverage. On April the 7th, this is National Coffee Cake Day. This gives us a reason or another reason to linger over a cup of joe. This is also the National Give Girl Me Too Day. Recognizes the strength and endurance of women of all ages and is an opportunity to show support for each other. And I love this one. Rosemary has been celebrating, this is one of her favorite holidays. This is No Housework Day. It directs us to put down the cleaning solution and toss aside the laundry for one day each year on April the 17th. The housework can wait. National Bookmobile Day in April recognizes the mobile access of information and resources. It's also National Walking Day. So anyone who took a walk today, you are within the National Walking Day. And this is also the Child of Hope Day, takes each year the National Child Abuse Prevention Month. Sets aside to ask the country to make a lifelong commitment to joining the fight to end child abuse and neglect. And we also got a couple of events that happened today. In 2012, the Anonymous Computing Hacking Group is credited with launching an attack on the United Kingdom's Home Office. In '88, Russia announces it would withdraw its troops from Afghanistan. They learned their lesson. In 1978, the Gutenberg Bible sold for $2 million in New York City. In 1953, the first west to east jet transatlantic nonstop flight. In '53, Dag Hammarskjöld of Sweden was elected the second United Nations General Secretary. In '02, the Texas Oil Company became Texaco. And also in 1985, the first live telecast of the Easter Parade took place. And at this time, do we want to take a break now before introducing the Toastmaster, or do you want to introduce the Toastmaster, who tonight is
Edward.
Edward? What do you want to do? 5-minute break, then introduce the Toastmaster, or introduce the
I don't know if we need a break, but I'll go over the roles just so we can know who's doing what. And May, I emailed it to you, but I'll talk about the roles now that we have and what we need filled. I will be the Toastmaster for this evening. Word of the day, I have Steve. We don't have an inspirational moment. Humorist is Precious. Educational moment is Mr. Tantello. Speaker one is Robert. We have a very interesting speech where there's going to be audience participation. And I put the difficult audience roles in the chat for those that are participating. We also have the table topics master or mistress, Rosemary.
Here. I can always find an inspirational moment if you like.
Okay,
Since
sure.
we only have one
Yeah.
speaker.
That'd be great.
Alrighty.
And as the evaluator for the speech, we have Dan. The speech, by the way, it's a 10 to 15-minute speech. So it's part of a project. So it's a little bit longer than a standard speech. We don't have an R counter or grammarian. And the timer is Precious, as indicated by her background. So
Who's
that's
your
it.
general evaluator?
We don't have one. We're taking
I'll volunteer.
applications. Okay.
Good
I'll
for you,
volunteer.
man.
I'll
Great.
volunteer. I
Thank
mean,
you.
I don't want to take it from the members, but if you don't have any, I'll be
don't
more
have
than
one.
glad to be your G.
We would love to have you as that.
That's the best role for a guest anyway, to give a little feedback meeting.
I will be kind and I'll be diplomatic. I don't want you to cease to invite me or welcome me.
Then you better take it, because I would not have been diplomatic. So thank you.
I'll leave it for you for another day. Maybe next week yours.
All right. Well, it looks like so we have Rosemary filling in on the inspirational, and then general value we have May. So the only roles we're not going to have is the odd counter grammarian or the intrepid inquisitor, but everything else is filled up.
Can I recommend something as a general evaluator? For the interpreter quizzer, people can do
Yeah.
round robin. So that could be covered. And I will say this, and I'm doing it just an exercise for me. I'm willing to take the counter and the grammarian just for an exercise, and I'll do as much as I can. How does that sound?
Sounds wonderful.
Okay.
Yeah, I agree. Let's all take some notes during the meeting so we can have some fun trivia questions at the end about the meeting. So I'm the Toastmaster for today, and my theme of the meeting was practice makes perfect. And what that means to me, I was referring to practicing when trying to learn a new skill. We're all in Toastmasters here, and I think public speaking is a skill. I think it's a valuable skill. And I would hope that most people here agree, because you're in the same place I'm at Toastmasters. And I looked up some ideas that, or topics that what makes, how do you get better at a new skill? What practice makes perfect is one example, but there's other things besides practicing. Although practice is one of the most important topics, there's other things that you can do to develop a new skill. Some of the tips that I've learned over the years, and just by doing different things with studying in school or on my own, one of the big items I like to do is I like to have more than one input method. And when I say input method, if you think of like a textbook to learn a new skill, but there's more methods than just using a textbook. Internet research, I'm big into that, because there's just so much information and it's all readily available. You have to find quality information, but there's a lot of information that you can really educate yourself with the internet and Google and search engines and YouTube. So I like to do my own research. I like to watch videos of people that are interested in the topic I'm in. Also talking, we're in Toastmasters here, so we do like to talk. You want to talk to other people that have those skills, so you can learn what they do and get their experience and have them share with you what they've learned. With these multiple inputs of information, you want to have a strategy of interacting with that information. Watching something is visual, but it's also listening. Talking, you have back and forth. You can see other things besides just the person speaking. You can see their interactions with maybe their gestures. So the multiple inputs you have allows you to interact with that information. Another point I've learned is to try to make this information more meaningful to you. Try to understand, if it's a new skill, why you are doing it. So why are you doing Toastmasters? For me, it's to get better at public speaking. either one-on-one or in front of a group. That's been my big area where I've tried to improve, is getting better speaking to a group. It's, to me, there's that fear factor and a little bit of intimidation going into it. But you want to, if you're able to picture a why or have a why of why you're learning that skill, that's really going to be valuable to you and it's going to keep you motivated. If you don't have a why and you're not really interested in it, you might burn yourself out with that and then just give up and say, well, it's not really meaningful to me, so I'm going to move on to something else. The next, another point is learn by doing. One of our previous Toastmasters, Jason, will always say, practice, practice, practice. So you want to do whatever you're trying to learn. That's the best way to do it. If you don't practice whatever skill you're trying to acquire, you're not going to get it. You're never going to perfect it. So you want to practice what you're doing. You want to also, when you're practicing, you want to make sure that you're learning or practicing that skill correctly. That's why we're here. There's experts here, there's DTMs, there's people that have been Toastmasters for years, and they have the skill that other people are trying to learn. So, I want to learn the best way to do it, and I want to learn how to do it properly. So I'm practicing that skill correctly. There's also experts you want to learn from, experts online or in some of the TLI meetings, Toastmaster Leadership Institute. You can talk to experts about how they approach public speaking, or if it's something other, another skill, you can research experts or maybe talk to an expert on how they learn to do what they're doing. When you practice, you want to be deliberate. Andrew Erickson said, spend time on your weakness and concentrate while practicing. So you don't want to be distracted. For me, when I'm trying to learn a new skill or practice something, I have just background music on. I can't have music with words in the music because then I'll start to analyze or think about the song that's playing. So I like background music. I don't have the TV on. I don't want to be distracted. I just want to be focused on what I'm trying to learn at that time. Another point that I've used is the Feynman technique. I've talked about it at one of our meetings, and I may do another, I may do a speech on it. It's, you want to understand the new skill well enough to be able to teach it to someone else. And if no one around is willing to listen to you teach it, you can talk to yourself and teach yourself, just reinforcing that concept of the new skill and how to better be able to explain it. Because if you can teach that new skill, you know it better than someone that has just read about it. If you're able to teach it, it really reinforces those concepts of practicing a new skill and practicing. So I will pause there because I have some more to go on, but I want to move on with the meeting. So our first role today is going to be the word of the day with Mr. Steve Hamill. Steve, great to see you. We enjoy the Star Wars background. Go ahead, tell us what the word of today will be.
Let
You're on
me share my screen. Give me a second. Am I sharing the screen? Oh, here we go. All right. So the word of the day will be daze or dazed. So you can use either form, the verb or the adjective. Basically, everybody's probably heard of dazed and confused. So this is basically my normal state most of the time. Examples, I was left dazed and confused, like I just said. You can use the past tense, dazed, of course. In past participle, dazed also. So it seems to be a lot of dazed. Makes someone unable to think or react properly. Stupefy, bewilder. She was dazed by his revelations. So similar, like I mentioned, stupefy, stun, knockout, layout, or other synonyms of it. What's interesting is we often see like Latin or French origins of word. So it's rare to see a Norse or Old Norse origin for the etymology of the word. So that's kind of interesting, I think. And as you see, and which I also often find interesting, is how has the word been used? We often use words that are not well used. In this case, the usage has increased dramatically, even exponentially over the last couple of decades compared to how it was in the early 1900s, and it was basically not used at all almost before 1850. So tonight's word, daze or dazed. You will get credit for both. Thank you very much. Back to you, Mr. Toastmaster.
Thank you, Steve. I think that's one of the fears that when people are talking about public speaking is becoming dazed on stage, where you're on stage and you're about to talk, and then you lose it. You just lose your train of thought, and it just goes away. So I think we'll get a lot of usage out of that word tonight. It's a good word and it's easy to use. So I expect high participation. Okay, thank you for that word. And you changed your name to it. That's great. That'll help us remember it. I want to move on now to the inspirational moment. And Rosemary has been gracious enough to volunteer for this position at the last minute. She must just have these inspirations just tucked away and ready to pull out at a moment's notice. So thank you for doing that, Rosemary. Let's hear your inspirational moment for tonight.
Thank you, Mr. Toastmaster. Thank you. Thank you for that wonderful word and the etymology, Steve. Excellent. You know, I've been dazed trying to recruit people, re-recruit, re-interest people in rejoining this club. And I was frankly getting a little pessimistic, but I remembered my words of wisdom from my favorite Pope, the fat little Italian grandpa, Pope John 23rd. Consult not your fears. Consult not your fears, but your hopes and your dreams. Think not about your frustrations, but about your unfulfilled potential. Concern yourself not with what you tried and failed in, but what it is still possible for you to do. That's for us. And a little preview for the executive meeting. And I hope we can all stay. I don't know if May can stay. A goal without a plan is just a wish. Great writer Antoine Saint-Exupéry. All righty. Thank you very much for that opportunity, Mr. Toastmaster.
Thank you, Rosemary. I started to think of Yoda, where he says, "Do or do not, there is no try." when you were talking about trying, my mind just went to that. May wanted to add in a little tidbit for the inspirational. So go ahead, May.
Thank you. Well, now I have two, but one is very quick because of the planning. This I like very much. Fail to plan is plan to fail. And the one I had in my heart is, your talent will determine what you will do. Your motivation will determine how much you will do. Your attitude determines how well you will do it. Lou Lutz, he was a football player or some sort. Thank you for allowing me to share those with you.
Well, those are great tidbits. I'm glad we're recording this. I think I'm going to watch it back for some of these cool quotes that we're getting tonight. Okay, so now we have we're going to have a humorist with PJ. Precious, would you like me to time you for, or we won't? No, we don't need a timer for the humorist. But go ahead with your humorous moment. We're ready for a laugh.
Yeah, good evening, everyone. I feel dazed when Dan challenged me to do the humorous of the day. So here it is. Father writes a letter to his son in prison. What happens next is genius. An old gentleman lived alone in New Jersey. He wanted to plant his annual tomato garden, but it was very difficult work as the ground was hard. His only son, Vincent, who used to help him, was in prison. The old man wrote a letter to his son and described his predicament. Dear Vincent, I am feeling pretty sad because it looks like I won't be able to plant my tomato garden this year. I'm just getting too old to be digging up a garden plot. I know if you were here, my troubles would be over. I know you would be happy to dig the plot for me, like in the old days. Love, Papa. A few days later, he received a letter from his son. Dear Papa, don't dig up that garden. That's where the bodies are buried. Love, Vinny. At 4 a.m. in the next morning, FBI agents and local police arrived and dug up the entire area without finding any bodies. They apologized to the old man and left. The same day, the old man received another letter from his son. Dear Papa, go ahead and plant the tomatoes now. That's the best I could do under the circumstances. Love you, Vinny. That's it for today. Back to you, Mr. Toastmasters.
All right. Thank you, Precious. That was an interesting story with some humor in it. I think we all enjoyed it. So tonight, we do have an educational. Right, yeah, I was going to jump to the speech, but we have an educational with James or Jim. Sorry, educational moment. Either one works. James, take it away.
Thank you, Mr. Toastmaster. Well, tonight we're going to do a little role, the general evaluator, and we have a general evaluator script. Now, here's the example of a script. Thank you, Mr. Toastmaster. Good evening, fellow Toastmasters and most welcome guests. Here at Sarasota Evening Toastmasters, we don't lift weights, we lift each other. My name is Jim Tantello, and I will be your general evaluator for today. One of the main reasons to have an evaluation portion in our meeting is to lift our members so they'll come back and speak again. Now, the evaluation portion is broken down into 3 parts. Part 1 will be introducing our evaluators to present their evaluations of tonight's speeches. Part 2 will be an introduction, our appointment holders, timer, grammarian, counter, and word of the day to provide us with their reports. In part 3, I will give an overview evaluation of the meeting as a whole tonight. And some of the things that the general evaluator should be looking for: was the lectern exchanged properly and never left unattended in the speeches? Did the speakers provide the Toastmaster with their introductions? Table topics, were the table topics appropriate? Were members called on in an appropriate order? Those with no role, then smaller roles, then larger roles. Were guests invited to participate? General comments. Did everyone explain his or her duties as well as give good reports? Has everyone in attendance had an opportunity to speak? Did we learn something new and have fun? Mr. Toastmaster, I'll hand the lectern back to you.
Thank you, Jim. I will make sure the lectern does not go unattended tonight. I got that. I got it.
I'm thinking hybrid.
Okay, so we're going to move on. Thank you for that. We're going to move on to, we have a really interesting speech tonight with Mr. Robert McGuire. Something a little different about it is there are different roles for the audience members, and I put an overview of the roles in the chat. It's in a PDF called Difficult Audience Roles, if anyone wants to look at. Robert's going to give a speech tonight. It's a 10 to 15 minute speech. It's a level 4 managing a difficult audience. And he has going to give a speech, and then there's going to be certain audience members that interrupt him or try to throw him off the speech while he's giving it. And his job is to, deal with that or stop it or politely, excuse that person and continue with the speech. So it's kind of a speech where you get thrown off a little bit and you keep trying to, progress and move forward with your speech. The title of his speech is More Than Just Words. In this speech, Robert will share with us three altitudes, thank you, or the heart, or qualities we all need to embrace effectively to communicate with others. And evaluating Robert's speech is going to be Dan. So it's a 10 to 15 minute speech. Precious, are you good with the timings on the 10 to 15 minute speech? It's going to be 10 to, green will be 10 to 12, or is it 12:30? I guess 10 to 12 and then 12 to 13 will be yellow. I'm not sure on
No.
the
10, 12, 12:30. So 12 minutes, 30 seconds will be yellow. And then the red goes on at 15.
15.
And he has 30 seconds to finish. So 15 to 15:30 is the red. After that, he's disqualified
Okay, great.
and thrown under a bus.
Does everyone have the audience roles that they're participating in? I think we have Rosemary and Steve, and then Dan is going to jump in as well. Does that sound right?
What, can you, I didn't see the PDF. What is
You're-
Steve's?
Yeah, you're
Steve.
the arguer.
Yeah. Steve, what's your role?
I am the interrupter.
All right, thank you.
Rosemary is the talker, and Dan, you are the arguer.
Thank you.
May I just say that this is a 5 to 7 minute speech,
Oh.
allowing 10 to 15 minutes to gracefully handle whatever you throw at me.
Got it.
Can I-
And May
can I
has a
just-
question. Go ahead, May.
I just want to add, because I've done this project, just for the sake of the timer, just continue with their timing despite the speech. Don't stop, because he will be interrupted and that will prolong his speech. That's the objective. So
Right.
don't get distracted that he's gonna talk to this person and this person. Just keep the timing the way you were asked to. Does that help you, Precious? Because, okay, that's all.
And Dan, I reposted in the chat if maybe
Okay.
you joined after I
No, I had-
posted it, but I want to. Okay, you got it. Great.
I didn't have Steve's role.
Okay.
Thank you.
And just a quick question. So it's only one time, like for me, for example, it's only one time I'm allowed to interrupt. So once you shut me up, I have to stop.
I know that'll be difficult for you.
That will be very
That's
difficult.
How it goes.
Yeah, make it count. Make your interruption count.
Do I only get to talk once?
You,
Yes.
yes,
I don't know.
you
Rob,
can have a conversation, but then once I gracefully work through that interruption, and then you're done.
Oh.
Yeah, so a translation, when he tells us to shut up, then we're done.
I just want to share one more thing. Rob, when I had my project, people did it one after the other. I'm not sure if the people you assign them to interrupt, that they keep a time between, like if one interrupts you and then you take care of that, let them allow you to speak for a minute or a minute and a half before the next one interrupts. Let them not all do it immediately after another. Yeah. Because when they did mine in the first 2 minutes, all of them interrupted me. So I just want to make sure that to help you out. Yeah.
That's
Yeah,
a great suggestion. Let me catch my breath.
yeah. I think if we space them out, we'll have a better chance to daze him. How about that? Good.
Fun.
So Robert, whenever you're ready, let the games begin.
Where have all the meaningful conversations gone? A few years ago, pre-COVID, my wife and I were dining at our favorite restaurant called T-Bones. And across from us was a young family with a little 2-year-old boy. And the mom and dad were sitting there glued to their cell phones. And here was this little boy sitting in his high chair, eating Cheerios, trying to get their attention, and nobody was paying attention to him. So he turned and he looked at me, and I saw him and I smiled and he smiled back. I waved and he waved back. I did the peekaboo thing and he peekabooed me back. Well, the whole time, his parents had no clue that I was having such fun with his son. Mr. Toastmaster, fellow Toastmasters and guests, as Toastmasters, we strive to be better communicators, and our goal is to improve our speaking skills. Well, that might be different than the rest of the world, but here's what we all have in common. We're all human and we all crave social connections. Well, you'd think with our cell phones and our computers and Zoom that we'd feel more connection. Well, actually, we don't. With Zoom, we may be electronically connected, but socially, we are disconnected.
Yeah, but Rob,
Yes.
you seem to forget that some people don't necessarily like being social or social interactions, like they're loners or on the spectrum, whatever, that they just like to be on their own and not like to have that social stuff. So having Zoom, working from home is actually a bonus. So I don't know. That's one of the things that a lot of people don't understand and always say, oh, you need to be more social, you need to go out, etc. What do you think about that?
Steve, thank you for that valid point. And certainly Zoom is better than nothing. It's a very valid point. But when you look at the humans in the big picture, biologically, we are wired for human connection. But certainly the point you make is extremely valid. And thank you for sharing that. That yes, that there are some benefits to Zoom. So thank you so much. So let's get back to what I was talking about. So when you think about our computers and our cell phones and Zoom, it does help us be more connected electronically, as Steve pointed out. But biologically, we are wired for human connection. And if you think about the example I shared at the beginning about the son and the parents just texting one another and paying no attention to him, that's sort of a sad commentary.
Oh, don't you hate people like that? Parents like that ought to be horsewhipped. Oh, and not paying attention to their children. Oh, and don't worry about that other guy, but he's just a pill. He just doesn't like people. But
Well, Rosemary's just shared a comment about parenting and not talking with one another. Is anybody else have any other comments about that? Well, thank you, Rosemary, for sharing that.
Well, I don't know. Do you think you'd have enough guts to play around with a kid if you saw somebody like that across the hall or across the table? Do you think you'd
yeah,
Are you
I
sure?
do it all the
you
time.
would put your face in
Yes.
front and go like
Yeah,
that?
that's why I
That's
say
good.
Rob
I
is
don't know.
right. Rob was
you think he's-
interacting with the
You think he's
kids.
good? You think he's tough?
And you see what
You have
this,
an idea
what
what
this
he's talking about?
electronic stuff.
Well,
Yeah,
I
Rob,
thank you both so much for your comments and your excitement over this. I would be happy at the end of my speech to talk more about you. I just felt your excitement in what I just shared. So thank you for sharing that with us. So let's get back. I wanted to talk tonight about these, what I call these 3 quality connections, or 3 things we need to truly connect with one another. And they are genuinely being interested in the other person, listening to them with all our hearts, and being empathetic and having unconditional love for the other person. About 10 years ago, I was on a flight, a JetBlue flight from Miami to Boston. And for those of you who have flown on JetBlue, you know that behind each seat, there's a television. And you can watch the news, you can watch a movie, you can listen to music, or you can zone out watching the flight path. Well, as I went to my seat, I noticed that the guy sitting next to me was just staring at the back of the seat. The TV wasn't on, and he looked really sad. And so I sat down to him and I said, "This guy looks like he needs a friend." So I turned to him and I said, "Hi, my name's Rob." That's all I said. And then he turned to me and he said, "Hi, my name is Paul." And for the next 2.5 hours, Paul shared with me stories about his family. He was from India, and he shared a story with me about attending an arranged marriage after he got back from Boston. He was flying off to India. And it just so happened that arranged marriage was his marriage. Well, my jaw just about dropped. Who would have thought that today arranged marriages still took place? Well, during our nonstop flight, Paul talked nonstop. He shared with me stories about his family. He shared with me his angst about marrying a person that he didn't love, a person he didn't know, and a woman that his mother and father had picked for him. He had shared with me that he had just graduated from BU's management program, and all he wanted to do was stay and work in Boston. Well, at the end of the flight, as the plane approached the jetway, he turned to me and he said, "Rob, thank you for all your help. It's been a pleasure talking with you. I feel like I've known you all my life." And he said, "Thanks for all your help." And then I said to myself, what the heck just happened? I knew nothing about India. I knew nothing about arranged marriages. And I had hardly said 2 words. And yet he felt heard. He felt like I was his best friend and that he had known me all his life. And that was only after sitting with him for 3 hours, about 3 hours on the plane. So how did all this happen? Well, first, while we sat next to each other, I focused on him. I was generally interested in his story and what he had to say. I didn't read a magazine or zone out with my headphones on. I spent the time concentrating on him. I was fascinated by his stories about India and his family. And I remembered a quote that I had heard from Dale Carnegie years ago that said, "You want to connect with someone? Be interested, not interesting." Well, this truly proved to be the case with my
Well, I have to just
friend.
stop right there, Mr. Speaker, because to me, it sounds like you're going about the world and trying to insert yourself in these different situations. And sometimes people are just alone with their own thoughts. And maybe the kid is learning how to juggle Cheerios, and maybe the guy needs to think through this arranged marriage, how he's going to get rid of this woman. And he's got to explain all this to you. I mean, why? In my experience, I've talked to many millions of people all through my life. I wonder why you think you're entitled to just interrupt somebody like that. And sometimes they just want to be left alone and let the parents, they've been dealing with this kid straight up for 8 hours and you're making judgments of them. I don't think this is actually correct.
Dan, thank you so much for that valid point. I could sense the emotion that you had, and certainly you've brought something to my attention that I never thought about prejudging others. And perhaps when I talk about these 3 qualities, these 3 connection qualities, then the next time I give this speech, it probably should be 4. So thank you for that input. That was very, very valuable. So let me continue. So I talked first about having a general interest in the other person. The second thing I want to talk about is really listening to what the other person had to say. Now, Paul faced a huge dilemma. One, he didn't want to get married to a stranger, a person he didn't know. And yet he wanted to love and respect his parents. Well, I had no clue about any of this, and nor could I give him any advice. And it certainly was a situation that I couldn't fix. So instead, I couldn't offer him any advice. So instead, what did I do? I chose to listen to him and simply reflect back the words that he shared with me. Some of the words like, well, Paul, it sounds like you'd really like to stay in Boston and work. And he would nod as if to say yes. And then I would say words like, Paul, it really sounds like you love and respect your parents. And again, he would nod. And at times he would begin to smile and I would see his face light up. So the first two qualities, generally being interested in another person and then really listening to what they have to say. Well, that leads me to the last point, which happened automatically, magically, to my surprise. And it's all about empathy and unconditional love. By truly being present with him and listening to his words and being generally interested, this connection between the two of us spontaneously developed. As I said, it was like unconditional love, a deep connection that I couldn't believe was happening. It happened so automatically. I believe it was because of being generally interested in him and truly listening to his words. So as the pandemic comes to an end and we are able to finally gather together as Toastmasters in person, yes, let's concentrate on making our gatherings special. Let's make them important. Let's take an interest in other people. Let's focus on generally being interested in one another. And when we do, those feelings of empathy and unconditional love will automatically happen. We're all looking forward to this time to end, aren't we? And we're all looking forward to gathering together once again. So remember those three special qualities: being genuinely interested, listening to one another with all our heart, and the empathy and unconditional love that will happen will prove to each other more than not that when we are together to connect and have a great time is more than just words. Back to you, Mr. Toastmaster. Oh, that was brutal.
Wonderful job. Wonderful job, Ron. That was the first time I have seen that type of scenario. It was very interesting. And I'm glad I was at a meeting to participate and hopefully I'll have some good pointers when it comes time for me to do that speech. So we'll take a minute just to give Rob some feedback and let him breathe and relax a little bit. I'll talk more about some of the things I do when I'm trying to practice and learn something new. Is I will take breaks. I think that's an important part of the practice mentality of learning a new skill. You can't just go hard for too long. You have to give your mind a break. You have to do something else, just like a brief escape. And when you do that, it keeps your mind fresh, and you avoid fatigue when you're studying or you're trying to just practice something continually. And when you take a break and then you come back to it, you're almost reinvigorated to keep doing that practice. So I think that's a very important part of practicing. is to take a break. Another point is, oh, I think we're at, is that enough time? I think we're at a minute now. I can save my next point. Okay. So the next role tonight is our table topics mistress. Is that what you want me to call you, Rosemary? Is that okay? The table topics mistress. And of course, the theme tonight was practice makes perfect. So Rosemary is going to get us, provide us with table topics questions that have something to do with practicing something. So they should be interesting.
Yes, Mr. Toastmaster. This is going to be interesting. I'm going to play the devil's advocate. Practice makes perfect? Well, in the larger sense, I mean, is there any such thing as perfection, period? I see we have all distinguished speakers here. Precious Joy, practice makes perfect. Do you agree or disagree?
Thank you, Miss Table Topic Master. For me, a little bit disagree to that. Because for me, I have this quote since when I was a child in grade school. Practice does not make perfect. Only perfect practice makes perfect. And as Edward says before, we have a room in this club to learn other people's experience. And that is the way we can improve ourselves. But it doesn't mean we can be perfect in a way that we could apply everything that we have learned. But if we make it into action and put it into action and make our goal to make our practice to become perfect, perfect practice, well, I think that would be great that I can say that perfect practice makes perfect. Thank you. Back to you, Ms. Table Topic Master.
Thank you very much, PJ. Thank you very much. Well, okay, there are several universities studies confirmed that yes, quality practice doesn't enhance performance in most fields like music or athletics. But as far as education and the professions, it improves only 1%. And Toastmasters is an educational and a professional organization. So how would you define quality practice? Jim Tantello.
Goodness.
I almost.
Oh, thank you, Madam Table Topics. I don't really know. I have to go back to my first class in chemistry at John Fisher College, first year of college. The professor was from White Russia. I don't know where that is, but him and his wife escaped, and he was our instructor. And the first day he comes into class, he writes in Latin, repetition is the mother of studies. And then he proceeds to tell us that he will expect us to memorize the first 30 elements in the periodic table. Because in his exams, if you do not know right off the bat what they are, you will not finish his exam. You will lose credit and you're going to flunk. It's as simple as that. So for that thing, I started to learn my periodic table down the road. And I think in the later courses, it helped because you had memorized so many different things in the first year of chemistry. It helped you as you proceeded along your studies of chemistry. I think he was very right up on, repetition is the mother of studies. Madam, table topics.
Well done, James. Well done. Well, now let's talk about
Get your fingers away from your mouth.
about speaking and practice. Well, let's talk about, here's an interesting thing that a lot of musicians and athletes say that you can over practice, overtrain to the point of physical harm. How long or how did you train your dog, Steve?
Thank you, Madam Table Topics Master. Easy answer to that. I did not train my dog, nor am I able to train my dog to do anything other than to eat treats when I say treats, and he comes running over when I say the word. His ears just popped up. Anyways, the whole subject of training and of mastering skills and all that, I've always been corrected like years ago when we used to say practice makes perfect. Practice does not make perfect. Practice makes permanent. Perfect practice makes perfect, as I think Precious was the one who mentioned that. So if you're practicing something wrong, you will master that skill wrong. So in other words, you need to practice in a way that will improve your skill towards mastery. One of the things that is often mentioned is that the 10,000 hour rule. So if you do something for 10,000 hours, you have a chance to master that skill, whatever skill it is. Again, you have to apply perfect practice to make it perfect. And therefore, you need to properly train during those 10,000 hours. If you try to learn to play the guitar with literally a fork in your hand for 10,000 hours, you're not going to be able to play the guitar after 10,000 hours. However, if you take some YouTube training, some books, whatever, and then after the first couple thousand hours, you move on to a professional trainer and etc., and you gradually improve the competency of where you're getting your skills or your practice, then you will achieve mastery within the 10,000 hours. And if anybody wants to learn how to quickly learn a skill to the point to become a master at a skill in a very short time, you can always look at Tim Ferriss. He has done a lot of studies and personally became a master jiu-jitsu person, athlete, etc., in a very short span, and he even did a short series of a 10 or so items where he learned skills in a very short time to the point where he's pretty good. So thank you very much, Madam Table Topics Master. Back to you.
Good thoughts, Steve. Thank you. I think I'm going to have to rethink my original supposition here.
Sorry.
Well, now let's talk specifically about speaking. How do you go about preparing a speech, Edward?
Thank you for that question. That's a good question. At first, I was not preparing the right way, and I would be dazed right on the stage. I learned, and I'm continuing to learn how to prepare for speeches. At first, when I first tried, I thought I would just write out the speech and then just memorize it. But I found that writing doesn't translate to the spoken word as well. And you can come off robotic too if you're just memorizing and repeating. So I've learned different techniques. I've learned the memory palace is a technique. I'll write the speech, but then put it into index cards and then narrow that down, keep shortening it until I just have bullet points, and then I just remember those bullet points. I continue to learn. I continue to watch videos on how to prepare for speeches. And I continue to show up to Toastmaster meetings and try to get better at it. I think it is an evolving talent. And I think even really professional, good speakers are continually learning how to do it as well. So I have learned some tips on preparation, but that's definitely an area that I'm going to keep growing and trying to learn more by listening to others and watching videos and just becoming more knowledgeable on the subject, and then practicing, right? Practice, and practicing the right way, right? Because that's what we want to do on the theme of the meeting. So continuing to learn on how to do it. I can tell, and I know that from where I started to where I am now, that I've picked up some tips and tricks along the way, and I just see that growing more and more as I progress. So thank you for that question.
Well, thank you. Thank you, Edward. I'm so glad this is all being recorded. I'd love to hear it all again. Well, I've got to give Rob a break. He did such yeoman's work. But we have 2 DTMs among us with us tonight. So the first one is going to tell us, how do you rehearse a speech? What is your process? What is your best practices for rehearsing a speech? May Golly.
Madam Mistress,
Visitor.
Madam Toastmaster, the table topic, thank you for that question. I really appreciate it. How do you rehearse and practice for a speech? Myself, the way I look at the whole concept of a speech is this. First, I have an idea of what I'm gonna speak about. So the idea and thought first comes to mind. Then I have a piece of paper where I jot the thoughts and ideas that I would like to include in that speech. After I have this jotted down, I will think of an introduction, or what we call a hook. Is it a question? Is it a story? Is it a saying? To tie all my thoughts and ideas that I already wrote down on that piece of paper. Then I will look at this information and try to see if I could distill it into 3 points, which is the body, point 1, point 2, point 3. And then I will find out how they tie together, which is better to put first, and if there is a logical connection to them or a sequence to them. After I've done that, I go to the conclusion, because remember, it's my thoughts and ideas that I want to develop them to a particular conclusion, a call to action, or maybe an inspiration. So working that, I'm really practicing my speech. The process of preparing my speech for me is really learning the speech. Then I write the first draft, I read it out loud, then I type it out. And after I'm done with that, I read it out loud to myself and I record it. And after that, I just listen to my recording whenever I have the time in the car, I'm brushing my teeth. So you see, it's a process. Writing is a process, thoughts, details, connecting it together, having an introduction and a hook and a conclusion. And that's how I practice, actually preparing it. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you, May. Thank you. I love your sayings. I want to spend a half an hour on email with you, just all your sayings to add to my collection of quotes. All right, that leaves only one DTM in the room. So yes, so I guess we don't know who that is. Dan, you are helping a new Toastmaster prepare his or her icebreaker. You are helping, coaching, mentoring his or a Toastmaster to do his or her icebreaker. How do you do it? Take it away, Dan.
Madam Tabletop, fellow Toastmasters. A new Toastmaster coming in to give their icebreaker. There's a couple of things that I will go over with them. One of the things is, this is not the only speech you're ever going to give. You don't have enough time to tell everything. You have to pick a certain segments of your life to share with everyone. If it's where you grew up, what you do for a living, your family, just pick one thing. And then I also go to the triad. The most important lesson that I've learned in Toastmasters is the triad, or one of the triad, 3 things. People can't remember 4. So hit 3 main topics in a 4 to 6 or 5 to 7 minute speech. That's about all you have time for. Then practice, 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 as has been said. In my own case, I use a video. Before we had Zoom meetings, I would talk in a mirror. When I was working, I would drive down the street, and the hand gestures and everything got some concerned and somewhat dazed looks from my fellow drivers as I was doing these emphasis, especially with the 2-hand thing as I was driving down the road. Now we don't have to do that. We can use the video recording. Just as May had said, it's helpful to listen. Gee, I wish I would have said this or said it a different way. So I encourage people to practice the speech. That way, if they get flustered, something happens at the venue they're not prepared for, they lose their notes or whatever, they don't lose their train of thought. I would go back to those things. Just confine it. It's better to go in depth on a few things than to do a surface overview of your life, and really focus in on about 3 things. And the most important thing, practice, practice, practice. Madam Table Topic Master.
Well, thank you, Dan. Thank you. You know, Mr. Toastmaster, I think we could use any and all of these thoughts on our social media. It would be good recruiting tools for him. Well, thank you. That's my portion of the meeting. You made it very fun and educational.
Wait a minute. Can I do one?
Well,
I
Mr.
love this
Toastmaster?
topic.
We have
I'm
time. We
exhausted,
have
but I
time.
love the topic.
Are you recovered?
Yes. Hit me.
Oh, hit you. Oh, anyway. All righty. When do you start rehearsing your speeches for a typical meeting? The day before, or? All right, your process of rehearsing. Describe your whole rehearsing a speech for just a typical meeting, not tonight necessarily.
Thank you, Madam Table Topics Master. Despite my speech, I'm only slightly dazed. Rehearsing, to answer your question, when do I rehearse my speeches? As soon as I can. I loved everybody's input on how they formulate their speeches. For me, it's the rehearsing part, and I will do it on my treadmill. I will do it walking. I have a little recorder. I will listen to it, but I try to rehearse it as much as I can. Having said that, a lot of it depends on how busy my week is. If my week is busy, I have to confess, sometimes the rehearsal doesn't start until a few days before delivery. However, the speech is written by then and formulated, and I have to confess, sometimes it's like a couple days before. But when I do have the time, it's just like Jason used to say, practice, practice, practice. As a kid, I played the piano. And Sister Uriella at St. Francis Xavier Convent always used to tell when I waited till 2 days before my lesson to practice and rehearse, I couldn't pull anything over her. But normally, as I said, I try to rehearse it as soon as I can. Back to you, Madam Table Topics Master.
Thank you, Rob. Thank you all. Excellent for everyone. Back to you, Mr. Toast.
Thank you. At this time, we're going to have a vote. Let me make sure I have everyone on the list here. So I'll put up the vote and vote for best table topics for. Let me put the poll up. And while you're voting, I'll talk some more about practicing a new skill to go with the theme of the meeting. Test yourself. I find when I'm trying to learn a new skill, especially in the computer field where I do my studying, I enjoy taking practice exams to gauge where I am in the learning process and learning the new skill. I think that's a good measuring stick because it has, they have statistics against other people, how well you're doing on the exam. You can rate yourself and you can know on the exam what you need to pass. So it's a good point or time snapshot in time of where you are in mastering that skill, or, and how much more practice you need to put in to be able to master that skill. So practice exams are important. Testing yourself. If it's not an exam, maybe you talk with a friend or show them what kind of skill you're trying to do. If it's an athletic skill, you can show them to see if it's matching up with what you're trying to do with that expert level person. So practicing, practice exam or demonstrating the skill are important. We have one more vote still out there for the table topics. Somebody's holding out. Doesn't tell me who it is. Okay. I'll call the race at this point. Okay. Thank you for the table topics and the voting. And at this time in the meeting, I will pass the baton to our general evaluator who volunteered for this position. Thank you so much for doing this, May. She jumped in and was willing to take on the GE role, which is it's a big role in the meeting. It's like the second phase of the Toastmasters. So May, thank you for taking on the general evaluator and take it away.
Thank you very much, Mr. Toastmaster of the day. I'm enjoying all these tidbits and information that's so valuable in our ever so changing world. We have constantly to be learning something. This is the most important part, this is where we do an evaluation, and we have an evaluator, none other than our wonderful president, Mr. Dan Filla, who will be evaluating our speaker. Please take it away.
Thank you, Madam General Evaluator and fellow Toastmasters, especially Robert, who's taken on a challenging role in more ways than one. This was a project to practice addressing audience challenges when he presents outside of the Toastmasters Club. So how appropriate. Nothing like an unruly audience. If you, all it takes is one to really throw you off. He was responding to 3 member disruptions. We had the talker, Rosemary, the interrupter, Steve, and I played the arguer. I read that to my wife and she says, that's right up your alley. So I didn't have to go out of my role too much. But I'm not supposed to evaluate the speech content, only the way that Robert diffuse those challenges. And I was looking for three particular things in his speech more than words: professional behavior, respectful interactions, and use of strategies to refocus the audience back on your topic. Let's talk about them one by one. Professional behavior, I thought Rob did a great job. He thanked everybody for their comments. You know, I tend to lose my temper and it's like, you know, that's not what they call professional behavior. You kept your cool. Thank you for your comments. Okay. Point is extremely valid. And you didn't belittle somebody for raising their hand, so to speak. What about the interactions with people? I thought it was respectful. You were polite to other people and not no smackdowns or anything like that. Sometimes you get into these altercations with the audience and nobody's a winner there. And I think sometimes the audience member likes to get you there. For example, as Steve pointed out, you know, you referenced something that he had pointed out prior. So you gave respect to him by acknowledging him when you were addressing another person in your speech. So I thought it was good. And then use of strategies to refocus the audience on the members' speech. You did a couple of things. Does anybody have any other comments after Rosemary said her piece? I thought you were going to open Pandora's box there and have everybody speaking, but it was Jim, and you handled that and got it back on track pretty well. Thanks for your comments. I thought for area improvement there, I thought maybe expand those a little bit. They were kind of like canned after a while. Thanks for your comments. I appreciate your excitement. You know, almost like you could tailor. I would work on just flexing those and having a few more options. The last thing though, I did feel validated because, you know, I got 3 points, but after what you said, Dan, I might have to add a fourth. Not that you would, but I just felt like you really heard what I was saying. Madam General Evaluator.
Thank you, Mr. Phila, for a detailed evaluation. I'm sure it will be so helpful for our speaker, Mr. McGuire, to go and put all this together. There's more evaluators in my group. I would like to call the word of the day, master of the word of the day, Mr. Steve Hamill. Please, can you give us a report if we were dazed, if we did well, or what's all that about?
Thank you, May, who just was able to slide one in right at the buzzer. All right, our big winner tonight was Edward, who really embraced the word. I'm sure I might have missed a few of the occasions, but Edward seemed to have done it 3 times, and then once for Rosemary, PJ, Dan, Rob, and May at the buzzer. Did I forget anyone or any instances? All right, so that was pretty much my word of the day report. I did want to make a little comment, which I found actually awesome in regards to the table topics. I've never seen so many red in table topics ever, I think. I mean, pretty much 90% of I think maybe only one person didn't get to the red during the table topics. So I don't know how many people were disqualified after the 2.5 minutes maximum. But it was actually, I think it's a good thing because people seem to be very passionate about the subject and all that. So it was really interesting. Sorry for the off-topic interruption, but I thought it was something worth noting. So great topics, Rosemary, and way to engage everyone. Thank you. Back to you, May.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. I would like to call our timer. Please, can you give us the speaker, the evaluator, and all the table topic? Madam Timer, Precious Joy.
Thank you, Madam Evaluator, General Evaluator, I mean. For our speaker, Robert McGuire got 13 minutes, 13 minutes and 33 seconds. And for our table topics, Jim got 1 minute and 25 seconds, Dan 2 minutes and 2 seconds, Steve, 2 minutes and 5 seconds. Rob got 1 minute and 58 seconds. May got 2 minutes and 9 seconds. Edward got 2 minutes and 1 second, and I got 1 minute and 10 seconds. Timed by Rob. And for our evaluator, Dan Phila DTM, 3 minutes and 23 seconds. Yep.
Thank
That's
you,
it.
Madam Timer, for being so precise. And that's good for everyone to gauge how long they spoke because it can help them for the next speech. I'm going to give my report, which is the counter and the grammarian. I don't want to go too much in detail, but of course, the ones who spoke the most has the most of the ahs. And we did a lot of the ahs. There was a lot of ahs. So was used quite a bit. And I also like to mark these words. They were used by few of the speakers. Kinda, you know. So watch those words. It's only when you watch what you're saying, when you have an counter and the grammarian repeat them for you, that's when you learn. So don't kick yourself too much. There are a few words I liked we used. I'm going to run over them very quickly. Experts, entitled, no clue, skills, multiple inputs, practice makes perfect, approach, interact, proceed, motivated, learn by doing, deliberate, distracted, focused, reinforce the concept, move on, well used, high participation, words of wisdom, consult, predicament, lift someone up, attitudes, effectively, a bonus, valid point, biologically wired for human connection. My jaw almost dropped, zoned out, and fascinated. I just thought they were very interesting that we used them throughout the meeting. I will just give you my portion now, and I will try to wrap it up. We started on time. I was paying attention to that. We had a wonderful theme. Thank you, Mr. Toastmaster of the Day. It was a theme that was so timely, and you've collected the information so much in depth that we really benefited from all your input. Maybe you can put it all into a speech now that you have tried it out like that. And the educational moment, thank you, Jim, for going over the general evaluator. What is the roles? What is the role of the general evaluator? Inspiration, thank you, Toastmaster, for being gracious, allowing me to add a second one. That's so kind and generous from a Toastmaster of the Day. As far as the joke, it was funny, it was interesting, and it was thoughtful. We had to kind of like put it one and one together. I love that kind of joke because it's not only funny, but it's also make you think how to laugh and why you're laughing. Word of the day, days. I think being in this environment, isolated and watching ourselves on the screen, we all get so dazed. Wonderful. And I like the fact that you elaborated on the origin. I always like the etymology of the word. So thank you very much. As far as the evaluation, it's great. I'm just going to add a little bit for our speaker, just for the benefit for our speaker. If I were you next time, because this project will recur in other pathways, you can choose it, try to add different kind of interruptions. For example, ask someone to unmute and pretend they are talking to someone in the background. And then see how are you going to handle it, because you have to go back and find the microphone, find who's that person, and you have to kind of interrupt. Excuse me, Mr. Dan Phila, please, maybe you don't realize that you are unmuted and there is a noise. Could you please unmute? Things like that. Or ask someone to kind of make a scratchy noise or something, or play with something, and the same thing. And let me tell you, this happened to me. I was in a TLI and I was giving a speech and people were doing noises or they were talking to someone or another phone. So it was very worth it exercise, just as a feedback for you back again, right? Other than that, it's a great meeting. It's not by the number, it's by the quality and the attention and the focus and the interest that every Toastmaster bring to the meeting that makes the meeting successful and rewarding. I hand the mantle back to our Toastmaster of the day. Take it away.
Wow, thank you, May. Wonderful feedback, wonderful evaluation of the meeting and the tips. I'm really impressed with I'm always impressed with the meetings, but this was an interesting meeting, especially with the small number. We have really good quality, as you pointed out. I will go ahead and put up the poll for the evaluation for the evaluators. And if we can vote on that, should be pretty quick, so I won't go into more tidbits about practicing, even though I have some. We have, okay, there's one more vote out there. It's kind of it won't matter. So I'll go ahead and end the polling. And Robert wanted to offer some advice about practicing before I hand it back to our president. Go ahead, Robert.
Thank you, Edward, for your flexibility. This topic of practicing is something that I'm very passionate about. I'm also sensitive to the word perfection because I have to confess, I'm a recovering perfectionist. I was a dentist wanting everything to be perfect. Well, we're all imperfect in an imperfect world. And so once I changed my frame of mind from perfection to excellence and doing the best I could every day, things got better. So let us as Toastmasters always focus on excellence and always try to better our best. And here's a definition, and I'll wrap it up with this. This is a definition of a professional that I learned years ago, and I consider ourselves all professionals. A professional is someone who practices today with the hope of being better tomorrow. Thank you for letting me share those few words regarding practicing. Back to you, Mr. Toastmaster.
What a great quote. Thank you, Robert. Thanks for that information and helpful advice. We do have Intrepid Inquisitor, and if we probably all have some notes that we have or that we could ask one or a question about. So let's just unmute the mics and throw out some of the questions from our notes to the group, and let's have some fun for a few more minutes before.
Can I have a question?
Yes.
Our joke master, what state was the papa from and his son? What state?
Jersey.
New Jersey.
New Jersey.
Jersey.
Is that right, Precious?
Yes, that's New Jersey.
A lot of wops in New Jersey.
Stop it.
I wrote down one. Who mentioned the 10,000 hours to master a
Steve.
skill?
Steve Hamill.
And for the bonus, who came up with that theory? There's a book about
Tim
it.
Ferriss, not Tim Ferriss.
Gail.
No, I know who it is. Glidewell.
Yeah, Malcolm Gladwell.
Michael Glidewell.
Remember, the name of the book is Outliers.
Outliers,
Very, very
yes.
good book. Thank you for
Yes.
bringing that up, Steve. It rung a bell when you said that.
So I have a question. Tim Ferriss. Does anybody know who Tim Ferriss is?
Yes, of course.
I do not. I'll have to
What
Google.
You do not. He's got a podcast. He wrote the 4-Hour Work Week, the 4-Hour Chef, 4-Hour whatever. A lot of it is based on how to optimize things to make it more efficient, etc. So 4-Hour Chef, and then he interviews a lot of top performers in order to figure out what makes them tick. How do these experts become so good at their craft, and what tidbits can he do? He's written other books where they're all short stories about these specific things. So it's definitely worth looking into. If you have Audible or etc., you can get them on audios and stuff like that. So it's
And the book is the Titan, the interviews
Yeah.
with Titan of the industry, the big book.
Tales of Titans or something.
Yes, of the Titans is very worth it. Right. And he has a TV, like a YouTube kind of channel. You can look up all his interviews.
Yeah. Yeah, he's got probably 1,000 interviews now on his podcast.
Very good. Anyone else have, Robert, go ahead.
Steve, in his table topic, referred to playing the guitar with what?
A fork.
Or
A fork in your hand.
Literal fork.
I love it.
That just came out. I'm putting the link to Tools of Titans for those who want
Tools
to
of
look it up. Yeah, there's the Amazon link for it.
Dan, did you have one? Did you-
Yes, Rosemary said, told us what a goal without a plan is.
Just a wish.
Oh, good one.
Wish.
Yep, that's what it is.
Yeah,
A wish.
A wish. One question: when did the word days started was introduced in our vocabulary? Does it anybody remember what year?
1800s.
1850.
1850, yeah, 1850, you started seeing a reoccurrence. I'm sure it was used, since it's Old Norse, I'm sure it was used in the past, but that's when it really picked up.
Very cool.
well, talk about learning and having fun. May is having fun.
True.
Yes. That's the trick, isn't it? Learn and have fun.
Any other
Can I
questions?
say one thing?
Yeah.
I've learned from Jim Quick. Look him up on the internet. He said, "Learning with fun is permanent learning."
Yes.
Do we have to vote, Edward?
Oh, yes. For the best.
We already had all our votes.
Well, you mean you may just
No.
announce them, or I'll send them to you.
The results.
The
Oh.
results, yeah.
That was Dan's way of cutting
Chop,
this
chop,
short.
chop,
Direct.
chop, chop, chop.
Mr. Direct.
Well, this will be quick.
Yes.
Speaker goes to Robert, and May gets the table topics and the general and the evaluator. And I got to tell you, when you're doing 3 or 4 roles at a time, it's kind of you're not sure what you're getting the award for, but general performance for May.
Thank you.
All right, I think
I
if you're done, Mr. Toastmaster, we should probably move on pretty
Yes.
quick.
Yes. I am.
I want to share something with you guys about this multiple things. I usually hate doing this, and I would only pick one, except the club I used to coach, and then I became a member. There is one Toastmaster. She is 76. I know her age, and she's been Toastmaster since 1980s. So she's been Toastmaster for that long. When we have our meeting, for her to challenge herself, so she keeps her mind alert, she picks all the roles that nobody has. She ends up being the timer. She ends up doing education, evaluation, and learning from her. I decided to do this, not because necessarily initially I did, but observing other people, another person, just to let you know.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, May.
We have a couple of roles filled out for next week. Let's move into that. Edward, I think we have a speaker, 2 speakers and an evaluator. We do need a Toastmaster and table topics.
I will be a Toastmaster.
Pardon?
You might want to shut off the recording, Edward.
That's the second